We have breaking news just coming in. The GDP figures are out. Well, GDP grew by 0.2% in the third quarter of this year. Mining, finance, real estate sectors lifted GDP in the third quarter. Mining, quarrying grew by 5.1% in the third quarter, and 4 other industries contracted in the third quarter, that namely agriculture, forestry, fishing, and they declined for the 7th consecutive quarter. Household final consumption expenditure was up by 2.6%. Exports decreased 26.4%. Imports decreased by 4.9%. Well, very good morning. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's been a bit of a frantic
I wasn't sure whether I was on Morning Prime or Ground Report, but I didn't see you.
Well, it's good to be alongside you, Kia. Obviously, the breaking news coming in now. The GDP figures are out. You just took us through some of the numbers there. And to crunch some more of those numbers, we have our BizPulse editor, Clive Ramatabeele-Smith, alongside us with us to explain some of these figures. Clive, overall 0.2. You're not looking overly chuffed with this. I mean, are these expected?
I think we expected worse, Peter, and good morning to the both of you. I think we expected a bit worse than what we've seen now. A 0.2% is not necessarily great, but it's a sign of growth, which is fantastic. So we are excited to have a look. And I mean, some of the sectors that we were looking at that were quite interesting is to look at where we have not changed, particularly in agriculture, forestry and fishing, which also declined even further. So it just gives us an indication that we haven't been able to fortify those particular industries in a strong way. And obviously, agriculturally, we're talking about the drought that we've just gone out. So that still has an impact on the rest of the particular sectors of the economy. So I've got mixed emotions. I think I'm excited that there was no decline, there was no negative growth. But I'm also sad that there are aspects of our economy that we haven't done much of a difference in. The question is, what needs to happen in these particular sectors to fortify, to strengthen, and so that we can convince our rating agencies for the next 6 months.
Well, Clive, what actually should be done in these different sectors that actually have pulled down the GDP figure, even though it's still in the positive? It's quite a low growth margin. 3
things, very important, Kia. First one is we need to understand why these particular sectors are not growing. And if you look at our unemployment rate at 27.1%, it gives you an indication that those people could be easily absorbed into those particular industries, but they're not being. So what is it? Why is business not creating more job opportunities? Why aren't they being able to take these people into the real economy? And the reality is that, yes, we have a global problem, which is a cyclical period where we are going through a very tough time economically. However, in these particular sectors, like agriculture, for example, like forestry, for example, things can be done. One, you need to create a market. So we cannot do the same as always, where we have only the same people benefiting all the times within these sectors. They need to diversify. We need to look at other pockets in the economy that can actually support these particular industries. I can tell you now the issue with agriculture, for example. There is a massive, huge food shortage, and not just in Africa, in the world. And we have some of the best farming sites in the world in South Africa. But there's very little farming taking place. The land reform, for example, where people have been given land and they're not using it effectively. And that is another problem where, obviously, if these people could be commercialized, they could actually be helped to assist them to get to the farming markets that they need to get to so they can produce and reproduce food that is required in the rest of the world. That is something that government can have huge influence in, and it can actually start penetrating in those markets, train those people. Just in KZN, we have over 40,000 young graduates who have studied agriculture. They're sitting at home doing nothing. So those people need to be brought into the real economy and need to be assisted into making sure, because food is an essential part of our living. So we need to do these things. If we don't do them, then we will see these kind of declines go on, unfortunately.
Clive, the standout figure on these figures is obviously exports. I mean, 26.4% decrease. I mean, that's massive.
It's not a surprise, Peter. Let me explain. So when the consumer is under pressure, they start changing their attitude towards what they buy. And what tends to happen is, even the expensive things, because you'll know that within our retail space in South Africa, you know that we mostly import most of the stuff that we buy instead of exporting. So what would have happened here because the manufacturing industry, and you will see the numbers as they come out, would not have done well in the quarter three because they've not exported as much. We had a power crisis in the country 2-3 years ago, which we haven't recovered from. And so most of those companies that were doing the manufacturing have moved their operations outside. China has taken in a huge chunk of those particular jobs. And so therefore, that's why you go to Elroad, you go to your Steeldales, those industries where the metal industry was powerful, where South Africa was exporting a number of goods to the rest of the world. It's not happening anymore. Those places are dead. There are no-go zones because obviously we're not producing as much. So we need to bring back those particular industries. We need to work hard and see how do we open these factories? How do we create employment in those particular sectors so we can export a little bit more? If you go back to the food, for example, almost 20% of our business that we do with the UK is based on food. So if obviously we're not producing, and that's why you'll see the agricultural sector being hit there, because we didn't produce as much as we normally would because we had a drought. So therefore that's why you see these numbers unfortunately declining as well.